calling out the panelists for today's panel discussion. Dr. Sheila Shenoy, Dr. N. Shamala, Dr. Emma Srijit, Dr. Sridevi N.S. and Dr. Sangeeta Menon. And we request to be please seated. The topic for today's panel discussion is challenges in meeting women's expectation, case scenarios, and how to manage difficult situations. Our moderator for today's panel discussion is Dr. Uma Ram.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah. So I was actually debating whether to have slides at all because these are just day-to-day common challenges that we face when dealing with women and their expectations.
May I request all the panelists to be on the stage, please?
Okay, so I think sometimes when we are, dealing with women and their questions of us, and we are trying to balance our concerns about risks with what they want or their preference, and helping them have a good birth experience. So I'll start with something simple, may not be a huge risk issue, but it's a question of how do we respond. And this happens a lot in the private sector. I don't know if it happens in the public sector, it does as well. So this is a second gravida, she's 20 weeks pregnant, she's low risk, she has absolutely no complaints. But very often they come and say, doctor, we were unwell, we took off a week, give us a medical certificate. They haven't actually come and seen us when they were sick, or they want to take leave early, or increasingly now, they don't want to travel to work, and so they want a letter from us saying that she needs to work from home. So I'm happy for any one of you to start off.
Yes, this happens occasionally. People will come, especially bank employees. They cannot take rest when it's a heavy work. But ideally, according to rules, we should not provide. We should ask them to stay near or something like that. That is my opinion.
Fair enough. Just quick yes, no, would you be happy to give? Will you not give?
Yes, it is very difficult because it is under pressure that they're giving, one. And another thing is, it is easy if she wants to continue the work, she has to shift to a nearer place to the workplace. That is better, that we have to counsel them properly. And maybe because she is afraid because of this travel, it may cause any problem to the pregnancy, preterm labor, something like that, maybe in her mind.
Okay. So, yes.
There are lots of cases I think we get. In private sector, it is very, very common now. What I usually say, I don't think people will like it. What we usually say is, we doctors, we have been working throughout our pregnancy and nothing has happened to our pregnancy. We do night duty, we work, we do all these things. This is the first word first sentence which we tell, but then at times we do have to give them a certificate saying you work from home, but not take leave.
Okay,
Definitely not.
Fair enough.
I work for the government, so we don't have very many of these kind of patients, but now we have a large majority who come and say it's election time, we are on election duty, and therefore please certify that I can't do election duty. So I checked with the government and they said that you just need to prove that she's pregnant, which is a very easy thing for us to do.
Okay, fair enough,
But,
fair enough.
But if I was to have somebody, like as Rama said, I would always tell them that, we did the same too. More than that, you need more leave after the baby is born.
Yeah.
That's when you'll actually contribute to something of how the baby will develop. Now if you're at work and moving, you'll get a little bit of exercise. You won't sit at home and eat trash, and therefore you may not develop gestational diabetes. You'll be more supple and pliant, so come to work.
Okay, so
I tell the husband that, see, keeping her home, a person who is working is more troublesome than sending her for work. That's what you understand that and go with her and go to a place where it's close to her hometown so that you can be happy with her and you can walk, you can travel and she need not travel. So that is something I tell. And I always tell them maternity benefit or maternity leave is only for the giving of milk. And looking after, as Sangeeta said, to look after the baby and be good to the baby and give all your, and for your health and for the baby's health only, that maternity leave is there, not for to keep quiet and be at home and happy.
So I think there are challenges, but the points that came out from the experience of the panel is that you cannot, really you shouldn't be giving a certificate if there isn't a medical indication, but it's an opportunity to explore why is she asking for leave and then reiterate some positive reasons why she could work. Okay, this was another, we've had 2 or 3 or 4 of these women, not that common in the last year or so. They just don't want any vaccination. They decline all immunization.
Fortunately not reached Trivandrum.
Not reached Kerala.
No, in our scenario, usually they ask for immunization.
Okay.
First visit, they want immunization.
All
That is
right.
what they want. We don't have
Okay.
this kind of scenario, I don't think.
Okay.
യഹോവയുടെ മക്കൾ അങ്ങനെ എന്തോ. Some group is there.
But they will usually,
Actually, they will not come for antenatal checkup.
Okay, so we just have to explain
We have to
to
explain.
them what the benefits of vaccination are, and if they absolutely decline, we just get them to sign off that they decline, and then take it from
I
there.
can tell them that there was a case of outbreak of diphtheria because in Malappuram that we heard in that. So that was really puzzling and nobody thought of it. So all this can be avoided by taking TDVAC or whatever. So that's what.
And
we
better
can-
to get it signed also in the
Yes.
consultation paper.
Fair enough. Okay, so this was a scenario, this was a real woman that we dealt with. She had a previous cesarean section for an oblique lie, and then she had, the baby died at home, neonatal death at 8 weeks, and now she's booking with you for her second pregnancy, and she's requesting a trial of SCAR for a vaginal birth. Just a quick yes, no, are you happy to do it?
We have to get the details of what happened, the cause of the death, of the neonatal death. The details we have to know, and the opinion regarding the TOLAC we can.
So it's exactly 2 years since the birth of the first baby.
know the reason for the neonatal death, sepsis or something like that.
Baby was well, day 8 at home. At
We
home,
can-
at home.
This opinion we cannot give now. Only near term we can give opinion that she can have TOLAC.
Okay, so she says to you, I am happy to continue care with you if you are willing to give me a trial of SCAR. So will you say yes or no?
I decline saying that I will not give you care because if I will not give a TOLAC very clearly. You can go to other places where they offer TOLAC. I will not because first of all her age is advanced age and her quality of oocytes are declining. How can I?
Okay, Mary?
Provided everything is fine. If you are looking after her, no complications, fetal growth is normal, eye of the fetus is
No,
normal.
now she's only 10 weeks. She's just exploring
Now
with you.
it is 10 weeks, but if you are following up, that
Okay.
is what I said.
Okay.
If you are following the patient, no complications, and lie of the fetus is normal, then you can advise, counsel them regarding the modes of delivery.
Very good.
If she had a cesarean section, she may prefer, that is their option.
No, she wants a trial of SCAR.
Trial of SCAR, yes.
You're willing to give
Trial
it.
of SCAR.
So she chooses to continue with you because you have said, okay, now she has reached 39 weeks. Ma'am, please continue. She's with you. She's low risk. You said there shouldn't be any complication. There's no diabetes, there's no hypertension. Baby is average sized. She's come to 39 weeks.
39 weeks, I would admit her.
She doesn't want admission.
She
She's
doesn't
telling you, I want to
wants
go
to wait.
post dates.
Then
Will you be happy?
If she is at home, then she has to actually report to the hospital in between, and I have to examine her. take an NST, everything is fine, and a vaginal examination. If the cervix is favorable, then I would make her admit her and wait for the onset of labor. If not getting into labor, I would like to counsel them regarding the induction of labor and management.
When would you like to induce labor for her?
I will counsel them, and if there are no other contraindications,
no
complications
contraindications.
no complications are there, and then I would like to induce her at 39 to 40 weeks.
Okay. Rama?
Mine is a no. I will say I wouldn't give her a
She
try.
wouldn't have come to you at
Doesn't
all.
matter, it doesn't matter.
Fair enough. So, Sangeeta. So in this panel, there's at the moment only one obstetrician she can go to.
Yeah.
Right? Are you going to be the second?
She can come to me as well.
Okay, all right.
But the only thing is I laid down facts for her very clearly, because oblique lie, she's probably had an elective cesarean.
Yes.
So the cervix is unlikely to be great even at 39. It may or may not be great. So put everything down. Write out, most importantly, the risk for the baby.
Okay.
No, I can assure her that she's unlikely to die because of having a toe lag, but the baby I can't assure, because there is a certain degree of perinatal morbidity and mortality associated with it. Now suppose she comes at 39 and says she wants to wait post dates, I'll tell her again that 40 is the upper limit, because we are dealing with, an uncertain kind of, wait till 40. If she doesn't, then induction. Induction again only with the Foley, no prostaglandin, no PG1, nothing, only Foley. And hope, and I'll tell her that if she's so hell bent on it, walk around. If you don't want to get admitted, fine, but walk around. I won't look at a scar thickness or anything, because it
Fair
doesn't
enough.
make her decision.
So we told her about the perinatal risk. We told her all that. We said, there is a perinatal risk, but if you're happy. She said, first time the baby was perfectly fine. They did a section for an oblique lie and still I lost the baby. So I don't want to have another scar and then have a problem and then, so I'd rather try, so I want to wait, right? So at 39 weeks, we told her the same thing. We're happy up to 40, but you have to keep monitoring all that. She came in spontaneous labor at about, I think, 9 o'clock in the night. And then she progressed and the consultant also came in and delivered her vaginally, but she was not happy because when she came in labor, the registrar who was on call again asked her, are you sure you want to go through a trial of scar? And she felt that the environment in the labor room was actually not positive and everybody was worried that she will get into a problem because she did take some time to dilate. So post-delivery, she did manage a successful vaginal delivery, but she was not entirely happy with the way the labor went. So this is, childbirth experience that we are talking about, that we think we've done a great job, we patted ourselves on our back, but ultimately she was not as happy as we thought she would be. So these are challenges in managing her expectation that we have to do. Okay, so something little bit easier, the 28-year-old primey, she's at 37 weeks and she's now requesting an elective section. Let's start the other way, or yeah, go ahead, okay.
So we may not do it at 37 weeks. I'll explain about the incidence of respiratory distress syndrome at 37 weeks. It is better to do, even if there is an indication, you'll be doing between 38 and 39 weeks.
Okay.
Or cesarean section on demand also.
It's the best day in the whole year, doctor. It's the best day in the whole year. My
That we can
astrologer has
consider.
told me this day.
But we have to consider the risk factors to the neonate.
Okay, all right. Anybody who would agree?
No, not at all agreeing. Because we have to have the whole family, the husband, the mother-in-law, everybody sitting together, because mother-in-law may be the person who decides. She may be the person who wanted that date. So we have to convince them that date is not the most important thing. To have, if at all possible, a normal vaginal delivery will be a better option than going for cesarean section. If again she is insisting, probably not at 37 weeks, only after.
So I think there's also the issue of why elective delivery and why at 37 weeks. sometimes.
So there are two, yeah, as you said, two issues. So I think she needs to be counseled. Very many of these, I find that the background, if you delve into them, why they want a cesarean, they've had some traumatic experience as children or young adults, and I think that's something we need to respect. So if she's hell-bent and says, you know, I can't deliver and I don't want to deliver, and I'm very sure I've made that choice, I think we need to stick with it. But what really you need to push her and says, yes, you need a healthy baby. 37 is not the time, 39, and dates don't really matter for all. You can say it, but I guess they will have their own
take. So I think two issues around why the elective section, many of them don't come out with their concerns or about their concern about labor or vaginal examination or pain management. And that is ideally addressed earlier on, but sometimes it comes up for discussion only close to term in the context.
These days, astrologers have upper hand than the obstetricians.
Yeah, that's true, because I had a patient who had this tag is there, of course, I have also tied the tag. So she came for delivery, she was supposed to go for cesarean. She refused this to be removed because that astrologer had told that since you have to remove it only after the Nulugetta. That astrologer had told. So she didn't want to remove it. So that's why the astrologer always has upper hand over the...
So later they will say the reverse. I was not aware such complication can occur.
Yeah.
That is what
So
is
it's very
happening.
important that we document it and we actually ensure that they understand the documentation. Okay, so this was a couple who was requesting natural birth, very minimal intervention, and she comes in early labor. She's a primip, her BMI is 38. And one of her very specific requests when she gives us the birth plan is that she doesn't want to have an episiotomy.
Fortunately, we never had a patient like that, but
I think Chennai specializes
I think so.
in these women.
It is very, very difficult. First of all, the BMI is 38, and that same BMI will be there in the perineum also. So that is the real truth. So it is, yeah, in the baby also. So it will be very difficult to have a natural birth. We can always try. Sometimes different types of obesities are there. Some people are more in the pear type and apple type. Maybe I am fortunate it is the apple type and or not the pear type, so that the legs are more and not the tummy. So maybe. So I don't know. It's very difficult for me. I will probably not. I cannot manage without episiotomy because we are used to like that.
Yeah, she's likely to have a rigid perineum. Maybe at 38 she may not be that mobile and active as well. But I think once she's told all this, and if she comes early in pregnancy, tell her to squat, tell her to sit with her feet across, sit on the floor, do her exercises. And I guess that there comes a time in life when you need to listen to them as well and their fears and anxieties. Her episiotomy, if she's okay with having in spite of everything, counsel her that if required and the head is banging on the perineum and not coming, and or I need to use an instrument, there are indications for all this. I may need to use it, but I'll try as much as I can. If I can't, then you'll have to give me a consent, but that we'll tackle when the time comes.
Fair enough.
If she comes in early early, if you're seeing her having a regular antenatal checkup, maybe you can counsel her, but then she'll come and say that in Western countries you have husbands who are ironing the perineum with massage and things like that. There are some patients who come and tell like that. If the husband is willing, fine, they can do this massaging the perineum and things like that, even during the antenatal period. Maybe it will help in some way. You can do some counseling.
They can do it themselves as well.
Themselves,
I
yeah.
mean, perineal massage is done, and it is shown to make the perineum more supple and reduce.
And you have to respect her decision. If she doesn't want an episiotomy, you have to respect her decision.
Yeah, so I think anyway the weight of evidence is that everybody doesn't need a routine episiotomy, and therefore, but we need to tell her what are the situations in which we may have to give it, and that we would explain to her that we need to give it, and at that point a discussion will be had at that point in time. Anyway, what happened was quite different. She came in spontaneous labor. She was coping with pain because she didn't want pain relief, And then at 6 centimeters, she said, this is really terrible, it's taking too long, and now I want an epidural. And so she took an epidural, and within an hour she was fully dilated, and then she just was so comfortable, she didn't want to push. Okay, so now she's 2 hours of full dilatation, epidural is on board, fetal heart is fine.
We can wait for some time, and if she's not pushing, that is now according to the WHO labor, we can give some more time, and then tell her we may go for instrumental delivery with an episiotomy if she's not pushing.
Okay. How long are you happy to wait?
From 6 centimeter, we can take 6
No,
hours.
she's full.
No, it is only fully
She's full for 2 hours.
fully dilated.
She's full for 2 hours
2 hours, it is fully, she is fully
with an epidural on board.
Yeah.
Then
She's a prime.
we have to take out the baby. I'll tell her we have to take out the baby by instrumental delivery if you are not pushing.
Are we happy to give her some more time? What else can we do? We can change position. Okay.
But
So we need
squatting
to.
position, maybe
Squatting and
squatting position, we can try.
Sorry.
Upright, squatting.
Squatting or upright.
Very many of them are quite comfortable in an upright position and walking around. Since she's not, if she has a walking epidural and she's motor sensation is okay, but at least standing up may help, or squatting. It doesn't need a special chair, just on the thing, and encourage her with her partner or with her, whoever is her birth attendant, to help her push. And if the head is down in an hour, she should make it. But again, the incidence of episiotomies are more when they have epidurals, and especially in this kind of a person who is not pushing. It's quite likely that the last push she may not. So you counsel her, but always the consent. See, once the head is down, you can't, there's no other way. You need to take it out somehow. So if she consents, she wanted natural birth, so she's unlikely to consent to an instrument as well. So the pushing for another hour, I'd wait for another hour and change positions, give her a hot compress on the vulva, warm compress, and iron out the perineum and watch.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we all kind of know what we have to do, that thankfully, as long as the baby's heartbeat is normal, there's no urgency. With an epidural on place, we can anyway give her another hour. But this is the time to have a conversation that, okay, at the end of that hour, we may have to help you out, and so you may want to change position, get her on board to your point of view, and tell her that this is, because this is something that does happen, because they don't anticipate the intensity of pain, and many of them who come in saying they want everything natural, somewhere along the way they've gone the whole hog, and when they have a birth that is completely different from how they envisaged it, then it's also important to go back afterwards and debrief them and talk to them later so that they understand what happened. I've had a patient recently who, she had bradycardia for like 4 or 5 minutes, and we shifted her for, because she was still only about 4 or 5 centimeters. And the conversation afterwards was, it was so quick. At no point did you tell me earlier that something like this could happen in labor, where I would not have, it took me and my husband so much time to come to terms with the fact that within 10 minutes, we were shifted from labor room to theater and the baby was out. But we can tell her that's because we did a good job, but and there was no time. She actually went ahead, she needed to have a vacuum after, but she delivered normally. Yeah, so.
Was it with episiotomy or without?
Was there an episiotomy? Yeah, there was an episiotomy. But you have to keep talking at every point so that they come to see why you're doing what you're doing, and they see that you have actually given time and respected their original point of view. So, Okay, this is again not an uncommon situation for pain relief. The woman requests pain relief, wants an epidural. The actually, very often it's the elders in the family who are outside the labor room who say she doesn't need to take it. How do we handle this?
We will respect the patient's desire.
Sorry?
We will respect the patient's desire and give epidural.
Yeah, but sometimes a woman, though she wants it, is not happy to take it because the family goes in to tell her, we don't think you should have it.
Because the family, consent should be there, no? Other than the patient, we need another person's consent when we give.
We need the woman's consent.
For epidural.
We need only the woman's
No,
consent.
and our anesthetist would never agree to this. Our anesthetist would not give unless there is a bystander's consent in the paper. That's the problem.
But I think medico-legally it's enough to just have one consent.
Maybe, but they just don't agree. Our anesthetist.
That's our real problem. We are not able to give in many cases because the bystanders don't agree. So this is a real situation in our hospital. So we are sometimes not able to give because we are worried. The patient wants, but the bystander don't want. I think it's the patient's right to have a respectful maternity care. And everybody says a companionship and the analgesia is a very, very important part in that WHO labor care guide. So it's our duty to give them analgesia and not allow them to suffer with whatever you give opioid anesthesia, it does not match with the epidural analgesia.
So sometimes we actually have to go and talk to the husband or talk to the husband when he's with his wife in the labor room and have him communicate to the family. We've had that. We've had to speak to the mother-in-law or the mother and say, it's not such a bad thing.
We usually ask the bystanders to come in and see how she's screaming with the pain, no, when she's having pain. Then maybe some of them give consent after that.
Okay. Okay, so this was a second gravida, previous normal delivery, 7 centimeters now, head is at -2. CTG has been showing repeated variable decelerations for about 20 minutes, 25
So repeated
minutes.
variable deceleration and is not a definite indication for cesarean section. It's variable deceleration. You said variable
Yeah,
deceleration.
variable decels for about 30 minutes now.
But it is variable deceleration.
Yeah, variable decelerations for 30 minutes.
So then we have to explain the risk to the baby if you wait too much. Asphyxia for the baby, the incidence of hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, and then we have to promote them to give the consent. If it is the deceleration is continuing, sometimes stillbirth can happen. We have to explain them.
We
Okay.
can tell them about the fetal mortality, the CP and all this, HIE and all these things, they will be worried and they will definitely consent.
Yeah, but if the variable dip was 1 or 2, just sporadic dips, maybe changing her position would work. But this is for 30 minutes and it is repeated. That means more than 50% of the trace has variable dips. So it's likely that you need to do something at this stage. Yes, as Madam said, counsel, tell them all the problems that she could have an IUD. And if they still don't consent for a cesarean section, I guess you wait. You can't do the cesarean section without her consent. Her consent, you can't.
And head is at -2 station.
But at times we see that even after the consent and we go to the cesarean, by the time we reach there, patient delivers in the
Yeah.
theatre.
By the time.
So actually, in I think this one of these situations, what we spoke to her and the husband, and we said, okay, we'll get things ready because it can take another 15-20 minutes for us to shift and all of that. And at the end of that, if there are still decelerations and she hasn't progressed, we may have to do a section, at which point it's better she's in theatre rather than shifting after giving that full period of time. And by the time, as you said, we shifted her because your second gravida, she did progress. And you can kind of stretch and see how, and she hadn't taken any pain relief, so she pushed and the baby came out. But fair enough, but still,
What you did was absolutely correct. I mean, anybody would do that because you can't sit and watch and after half an hour decide on cesarean. Tell them, this is it. Who knows, many a time they do progress and we have all done that. So, but then variable decelerations doesn't always
Yeah. Okay, so slightly different, antenatal problem which we see given the burden of gestational diabetes that we see. So this is a lady, a GDM on diet. She's not regular with monitoring her sugars. And you can see that the baby's, already. So I assume we'll advise her to monitor more, explain all the risks to her, etc., and come back, but she defaults again. So how do you manage something like
I
this?
always tell them GDM is a lifestyle disease. It requires diet control plus some exercise or whatever, walking and upper body or whatever exercises. Then only, after that comes the medications. So that's what I always, and medications
No,
have
but
to-
when they are not monitoring, when they default,
Yeah, yeah.
and we can see that the baby is also growing
Yeah, yeah.
larger.
So then
How
we
do
have
we
to advise-
motivate them?
Yeah, I'll advise them because fetus is always at a problem. See, it's already clear that the fetus is overgrowing. That means your sugars have to get controlled. Otherwise, the babies will not have a normal good baby. Baby will have going in for diabetes later and all these things. So you have to get it controlled. That's what I tell.
Yeah, sometimes we tend to tell them, especially in antenatal classes, about the 5 white sins, out of which sugar is one, and tell them that sugar is poison for the baby. So ask her to, if she doesn't, in spite of all that, and she's not willing to monitor, sometimes they're scared of the prick, or they don't have the machine. Where we come from, they don't have a machine. Now the government of Kerala has a system whereby the PHCs and the CHCs have a machine that they can take at a payment of 75 rupees, use it for the pregnancy, give it back and get back their 75. It's a very good system. So those kind of things can be done, and tell her that, unless monitoring is the treatment of diabetes, it's not so much the diet and the insulin. I need to know where you're going, and I can't look at you and say that I need to have those values. And explain the risks of all these things. If she
Yeah.
doesn't, usually, but what I've seen, I don't know how those babies will do later on in life, but they are macrosomic and they deliver. And after that,
I explain to them what can happen, sudden intrauterine death can happen.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't say that in so many words, isn't it? Sometimes we
have to
don't.
say
We
if they are
don't.
not monitoring and controlling the sugar, we have to tell them. If they come with the IUD, what can we do?
Yeah.
So that we had to, initially in the first visit itself, I say, this is the problem you may have.
Fair enough.
The significance of monitoring also explain.
Counseling, and then documentation of counseling also is important. Because otherwise they can say so many things after coming with problems.
Nobody told me
Yeah,
that.
that also is there.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I think we're down to the last maybe 8 minutes of the panel. Can I request each panelist to give one point on what you think we should do better in terms of managing expectations of women, and how do we, what challenges have you faced in managing expectations of women?
I feel they come to the labor room with a mixture of apprehension and hopefully joy after some time. And this apprehension is there for a large, so I think the labor room environment makes all the difference. It's not how stylish your labor room is, but rather the attitude of the first woman she sees.
Yeah.
So welcome her with a smile, speak to her, tell her that you're there for her. No, it's good to say, I'm there. I encourage house surgeons to do it as well. Say that, I'm there, don't worry, we look after you one by one, do this, and be with her. I feel we all look at labor very scientifically, but the small things, don't conveying what the findings of a PV are, she's scared of this, just pamper her. I guess she needs to be pampered. This is what I would see in a good labor room, attitude.
Okay.
Antenatal
Along with
classes
the-
may be beneficial. We can give antenatal classes, what is happening in labor room, and we can have some demonstration, and keeping a bystander who is close to her will help to some amount.
I always take her to the labor room before she goes into labor, so that she can acclimatize her with the people there, and also she can, when you're doing NST at that time, so she can know the people there and they talk to her So that's what, as she said, that is something to allay the fear of labor room. Labor room is a place as if, so that fear is not there. So that is something which can always help them.
Fortunately, we have a very good, we have got very good labor room sisters. That I think we should really appreciate, because all of them are, however stressed they are, with the patient they speak very well. I think that is very important. They are totally stressed. All our with all our NABH standards to meet all the 101 papers they have to fill. But in spite of that, all of them are very nice. So even though I get I'm a little bit hot-tempered. Even though I get this thing, they are there to pacify them, and most of the patients are happy. I think that is very important. How you train your sisters, how the sisters behave with the patient is very important.
That gives a great success also. So that is it. And we, in our institution also, we take the patient by about 37, 38 weeks, we'll take the patient with our staff from the OPD to the labor room, and we introduce her to the staff, introduce to the place, to the sisters and all of the faculty who are there, who are taking duty, and they become accustomed to the place, and after admission, then they are fine. They are comfortable with the staff, and they have no worry, and we allow one bystander along with the patient during labor.
Fair enough. I think that support, the taking on board what they want, being realistic in giving them our assurances, and being clear about what we can do and can't do as well. I think sometimes we may say, yes, that's possible, knowing fully well that it's not going to be possible. That's not a fair thing to do.
That cannot be possible in all institutions when it is overcrowded.
Yes, yes. And also when there are delays, when we tell them that, okay, so we may start induction at this time, or we will be shifted to the labor ward at this time, and it doesn't happen, sometimes we forget that they need to be told that there is a delay for this reason. So I think it all emphasizes, all these scenarios emphasize the importance of communication, backed by evidence and practice, and therefore, especially for the juniors who are here and the postgraduates who are here, learning how to speak, learning to use the right language becomes extremely important, both in English and in the language in which you may communicate with the woman, and that makes it easier for us to meet the challenges that because there is a change in the way I think doctors are being perceived in general. The fact that we are
in a
very high
medical colleges, we should have a communication skill kind of thing for the students maybe. When they come out, they should know how they should speak to.
I think they have now in the current curriculum, it is there, right? Okay, so thank you very much for being a wonderful panel, and thank you, and I just reiterate the appeal that Bhaskar made earlier, and thank all of you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.